Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I want to take the time and thank my guests for showing up because I feel that they are coming with several things that I personally deem important to me, and I assume that it is also important to them, and that is their time. I want to thank you, Michaela, for coming and sharing some of that precious commodity with us here at Threads of Enlightenment. And the other is your journey that housed all of the information and all of the sadness, the pain, the victory, the power, the wisdom, all of it that made you who you are today. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us here at Threads of Enlightenment.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Tell the people the things that you have given birth to as a result of your journey. I tell them we give birth to a lot of things because people are pregnant. So tell us about some of those
Yeah.
babies that you have delivered, as they
And
say.
I've given birth to two actual humans too, on top of everything else. I'm like, that's why that expression makes me giggle. I'm like, well, are we talking about my work or my kiddos? Like, because I did both. But because I've birthed actual humans too, but being a woman and being a mom. But yes, I am Michaela Cox. I am a speaker because I am speaking and trying to
Mhm.
do all those things with that. I'm also, and first and foremost, have been a multi-published author. I have currently, I think, I don't know, 9 books out, 5 series, whatever. I can't keep up. And I'm always working on things. But most of what I write comes from what I consider my heartfelt meditations that are my passions, or the knowledge and the wisdom and the life lessons that I've gleaned from the journey that I've traveled in my 44 years. And it's been quite a journey, I can tell you that. I call it 38 Triple D. It has nothing to do with physical appearance. It's what it is. It's going from how to learn how to go from surviving to thriving through lifelong disability of legal blindness. So disability is the first D. The second D was divorce at 26. And the third D was death of my beloved husband in 2017, and then becoming a solo parent. So 3 Ds, disability, death, and divorce, or disability, divorce, and death, all by the age of 38, hence the 38 Triple D. And
Wow.
I've learned a lot. And so it's a lot of that I learned early in life, but then I had to use again when, life changes, different seasons come, but sometimes we have to use the same stuff to do the same things, right? It's just in a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
way or in a different aspect of life, or, regard, or, area of life, but it's still the same thing. So I had to use what I learned with my disability, growing up with a disability and going through school and all the things I did with the disability. Because mine's not going to change. It's not going to go away.
Mhm.
There'll never be a day where I won't have taken a breath where I haven't been or will be or am legally blind or visually impaired, whatever you want to put on it. So I've done everything. I was born that way. I'll stay that way. It's my whole life. So, which, you figure it out and you get stuff done. And then I had to learn how to do the same things to get through a divorce and a interesting first marriage. And then still learning on the going through life without my husband and raising 2 kids. But I figured some stuff out. Okay. But, and I've started calling it the process or the approach that I use to get through these things, because in life we have a choice. We're either going to be a victor or a victim. We're going to decide we're just going to, oh, well, give up, or we're going to try and figure it out and do what we got to do, right? So it still comes back to
Yeah.
choice, and we'll get into that second. So I have this little process, and I started calling it that has served me well, I believe, in all of them, not just one or 2 or 3, but all of them across the board. So I believe it's a universal process, because when someone is in life, it's not a question of if we'll have troubles or trauma or tribulations. It's a question of when and how many and to what
Mhm.
degree and what severity or in what area. It's coming. If y'all haven't figured
Yeah.
that out yet, I hate to burst your little bubble, but it's coming. Something's coming if it haven't already. So you better get ready. And I would much rather be prepared to know what I need to do to get through that than
Mhm.
scramble for the rest of my life. Okay. If someone wants to make a different choice, that's their choice, but that's not the choice I pick. So, and life doesn't give us an instruction manual or a roadmap. Good luck finding it. And if you find it, please let me know. I've been looking and I ain't gonna find it, so I might as well create my own, right?
Yeah.
So, in that process of having to learn a lot of hard lessons early on because of the disability, I've learned, and I've started calling it finding grace through grief in life. So, the G of grace is having your grounding, having your foundation. What are you going to hold to in those storms and in those hard times, it's going to keep you steady and keep you strong. Or not having a foundation, and you're probably going to get blown to smithereens in the dash upon the rocks of life, and you're going to be really in a spot. So we need to know what our grounding is. For me, it's my faith. I'm faith-based, but that could be something else. You can get a solid foundation from other places. I would argue probably not as strong, but whatever. That's just because I'm faith-based. So that's my foundation. That's what I've held to in all the hard times of my life. So that's the gaining your grounding in your grief in life. What are you going to hold to when the storms come? Then the R is redesign, daring to redefine and redirect your own course in life. So sometimes we choose the hard things, but a lot of times it's situations that we have no control over, that we didn't ask for, but you go, okay, what now? What am I going to do with this now? And that's been my case. Like, I'm not perfect, but most of those, the 3Ds, I didn't ask to be born blind. Okay, people, I came into the world that way. I had no choice in that matter. And granted, yes, I chose to walk away from my first marriage, but it was because of his choices that made that marriage no longer workable. It was not needed to be. It was not a good situation. So I walked away, and then I dang sure didn't ask for my husband to die and to be a widow at 30, less than 40, and raise 2 kids by myself and have them grow up without a father when my children were 6 and 3. Not the youngest, but that's a hard hit to have early in life. They'll live, hopefully, God willing, way longer without their father than they did with their father, which is the tragedy of it. But I hope they have long and happy lives.
Yeah.
But and now they're 12 and 9. Like I said, that was almost 6 years ago in April. So I had to say at each one of those things, okay, I can't control the hand of cards I was dealt. I can't make them go away. I can't bring my husband back, unfortunately. I can't make my vision of parent go away. I really don't want to go back to my husband. Ha ha ha. No offense. But I do get to choose and have every bit of control over what am I going to do with those situations. So I get to choose. I get to decide and define what I want my life to look like. No one gets to do that for me but me. And so I have to look and say, okay, what do I want out of life? What do I want this path to look like? What do I want my course to be? Am I going to stay in it, or am I going to figure it out? And sometimes figuring out isn't making it go away. We're unfortunately, even though it's not comfortable in life, we're given situations for purposes. We may not like them. They may not be comfortable or fun, but they're still for a purpose. Okay. We can still learn something if we choose to. So I have chosen to, and I was taught and raised never to give up, never stop, and never quit. And you do your best. And that's how I've lived my life. I didn't say perfect. I said do your best. There's a difference. I think we're taught growing up that practice makes perfect, which is true. It does. But I think the better approach to life is practice makes progress, because none of us are ever going to be perfect. And that's what, I have perfectionist feathers, and I don't necessarily like that all the time. But I'm trying to be okay with that, and that it's a process and it'll be fine. And that's what I choose to think on more than necessarily perfection. But so I get to choose in all these situations what I wanted for my life and defining it for myself and what I want it to look like. Because telling me no pretty much as a guarantee means it's going to happen. I don't know how people feel about this expression, but it's pretty much hold my beer and sit back and watch me go.
Yeah.
And I say that because I could have not gone to college and just done other things and okay, I'm legally blind. What do y'all expect me to do? I can do a lot, even though I'm legally blind. And so I'm not bragging, but I'm just illustrating the point. Like, I went to college like everyone does. I graduated. I decided to get married and have kids. Well, married the first time, married the second time, have kids, and go to grad school and publish books. I mean, that's kind of an irony right there. You have a legally blind author publishing books. Like, what? That probably wouldn't necessarily you would think would go together, but it does. And it works very well for me. So that's the R of grace, is defining and redirecting my own course in life. The A is learning to live in abundance. Now, I don't mean finances, because I'm not a financial guru. I have someone that does that for me. Okay.
Yeah.
But it could be in finances, but I'm more speaking to of how we view our lives. What's our point of view? What's our perspective? What's our mindset? There's a reason why in our culture and society that you hear mind over matter. And if you put your mind to anything, you can do it. Mindset matters, y'all. It's a game changer. And if your mindset's in the right direction, there's nothing that can stop you. So we need to learn how to have a good, healthy, positive mindset. And when we may not control the thoughts that come into our head, but we do get to control what we do with them. So that's an important how we see things and how our mindset is and going to relate to what we do. So that's the A. And then the C is care. choosing clarity and care over chaos and confusion, excuse me. I am a huge proponent of self-care, and that's a whole nother conversation of itself. I feel like actually each one of these letters could be its own little topic, but I'm a huge proponent of self-care and the value that it gives to our lives and the importance that it has in all of our lives. I think people have thought it's selfish, but it's really not, because when you give care to yourself, you're enabling yourself to be the best version of you. And that's always a good thing, because when we're helping and giving and loving on the people in our lives, we want to be there for them. And we can only do that, kind of like you said about love thyself, neighbor. Like, we have to love ourselves before we can help other people. We have to care
Yeah,
for ourselves before we can do all the other things we do. And that can look different from person to person, but the fact of the matter is it's still important, it's still relevant, it's still needed. We can dive into that more if you'd like. And then the E of grace is being equipped for the journey, gathering and collecting the things that we may need to help us on our journey, whether that's our self-care. And so that in taking care of ourselves, we're able to have the positive mindset to stay true to the choices that we were able to do because we're grounded in them. So it all kind of feeds into each other. I mean, when you go on a trip, like I'm fixing to go to Nashville this week, I'm thinking about, what do I need to pack? What clothes do I need? What do I need for work? Whatever. So that's no different in life. When we're on certain journeys, we need, now it's not always comfortable for a lot of people to think I need things or I need help, but we all do. Let's just be honest. We all do. And that's okay.
yeah.
So we all need things to support us to do what we do. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's why I say to be essentially equipped, the things that are help you do what you want to do well, so that you can thrive in life and not just survive. I know that's a lot of information and quite a things to the process, but that's been my process that helped me get to the disability or work around the disability and have the life I want. And then what I had to do to put my life back together after getting divorced, and then the life I'm trying to live for me and my kids after losing their father, my husband, almost 6 years ago. So what do you want to dive into, and what Mike questions could I help explain? And I hope that's like, y'all are like, she's vomiting at the mouth. There's too much information, but I'm a good talker. So that's my process.
No, it's a great process. I love it. I will never look at the word grace the same again. So I actually love what letter represents in your process, in your perception, and how you utilize it to move through your journey. So let's talk a little about your childhood, Michaela. Here you are, you were born, quote unquote, with what people may call a disability. And how was your childhood in this sense? How were you able to deal with your disability as a young person in relation to what people were saying to you about your disability?
As far as like what the world would say about it, or like how
Yeah.
I was treated and what I went through is like in
What the
school.
world was saying, how was friends, people close by in your space, how were they talking to you, relaying to you, and having a relationship with you based on the fact that you have a disability and you're somewhat different from them? How did they
That's a
communicate
two-part
their
question for
feelings?
me. First of all, I learned a long time ago, and as weird as this may sound or potentially rude, I don't really care what the world thinks. I care very
That's
much
good.
about
It's a good thing to
what
learn.
my inner circle thinks, because they
Yeah.
matter. Not that the world doesn't matter, but their impression of me matters. They know who I am. They see what I do. The rest of the world, I don't really care, because at the risk of that sounding very harsh and brutal, I have to do me. You have to do you. We all have different struggles. I don't know your struggle. You don't know mine. So you ain't got to do what I got to do. And unless you want to pay my bills, I'm going to do what I got to do. So I don't really care what the rest of the world thinks, because they ain't got to do what I got to do. And I know that
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
really mean and harsh, but my point is I don't let it stop me. I'm going to do what I got to
Yeah.
do. And I know how it best works for me. And that's what I do. But as far as how it worked out in every day, like on the micro level of life, I had an interesting childhood in the sense that kids can be cruel. I had a lot of
Yeah.
academia while, excuse me, while I'm good in school and I'm good at academia, it takes a lot of extra work. The reason why that is, and it's hard for anybody, I'm not saying that, but okay, the root, without getting too deep into the weaves of my actual disability, the root of my disability is it's my optic nerve. It's totally jacked up. I don't know if you have a medical background or any
Mm-hmm.
context or anyone in your audience does. But basically what we're looking at is optic nerve atrophy or atrophy. And
Yeah.
it means that the optic nerve, if you've ever seen a graph of it, or like in your doctor's office, or maybe in a anatomy and physiology or biology class you might have had, the optic nerve in our bodies is actually supposed to be correct, a certain shape and a certain color. Mine is not the right color and is
Mm-hmm.
not the right shape. So basically what that boils down to is the bloodstream does not go through it like it's supposed to, which means
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't send the signals to the brain as quickly or as the way it would normally, therefore telling my eyes what to perceive. So it's kind of like a slow movie reel or a delayed process, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. And I'm quite sure if there's any medical doctors in your audience are going, yeah, I don't know if I'd explain it that way, but I am not a medical doctor, and that's the way it's always been explained to me. So that's how I
Yeah.
explain it to other people. And then you add other things to it, like nearsightedness and astigmatism and nystagmatism and crappy depth perception and peripheral vision. Makes it kind of an interesting combination cocktail there. But so that's why school is hard for me, not because I can't do it. It just takes me a really long time. And I don't drive. Legal blindness and driving are not a good combination, y'all. It's not good for nobody. So I don't drive. So there's always that. But
Yeah.
thank goodness we live in a world where we have Uber and, Lyft, and I have friends and family and, public transportation. Although public transportation is not always the best in the South.
Yeah.
Anyone who lives in the South knows what I'm talking about. But the point of all that is, so it takes me longer to do things. So in school, I had to work really hard to just do what everyone else did and do well. So on top of that, that was kind of much my life. And so when I'm in school, I don't really do anything else because that's all I have time for, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on top of that, I had a lot of social problems and struggles with, like I said, kids can be cruel. And so I pretty much kindergarten through 12th grade grew up with, being bullied and teased and all those things. You get over it and it's fine, down the road. But at the time it was very challenging. And depending on what year we're talking about and as things developed, because in life each season brings different challenges. So while the visual impairment was always the same, as I had to learn to do new things, it brought on new challenges within the
Yeah.
same area. So different school years, I would have different academic plans or different things I would do. So that was kind of the mix overall of juggling what it took for me to do well in school and the workload and the longer time it took me to do the workload and challenges on the social front with like friends and peers and whatnot. I don't know if that
Wow.
makes sense.
Well, was college always something you wanted to do, Michaela?
Yeah,
And when you
I
decided
was
to go
never
to college, what
I
field did
was
you go
never
into?
raised, that changed a couple of times. I was never raised with the idea of that, well, you can't do this. Like, well, we
Yeah.
all knew I wouldn't be able to drive pretty much. That was, I mean, some things you just can't get around no matter what you do. There's just,
Hmm.
it's not smart. I shouldn't
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
driving. It's not safe. There's nothing I can
Yeah.
do about that. But aside from that and a few other things, I was never raised by my parents to think, oh, she can't do what she wants. It was always
Hmm.
try your best, never quit, never give up, and give it your best shot and see what you can do. So there was never an expectation of, well, we don't think she'll ever go to college. It was just assumed I would. Now, they were aware that it was harder and that I would have to do things to make that happen, which is what I
Hmm.
did. But I did go to college and I did graduate, and I was determined to do it in 4 years, which I did. I originally started in elementary ed, but I switched to liberal arts because there was I don't know if this is the same kind of prevailing thought process in the education field. For a while in college, because I went 97 to 2001 and was when I was an undergraduate, there was kind of this shift in thinking that if you want to teach, it would be better to be really well versed and schooled in your content than
Hmm.
necessarily just get a teaching degree. So I thought, oh, well, if I really want to teach history, then I need to be really learned and well versed in history, and then I'll figure out how to teach it. So I
Yeah.
switched from elementary ed to liberal arts, and I did sociology with a double minor in English and history. And if you haven't figured out by now, no, I cannot just do one thing. So that's what I get my BA in. And then when I did grad school and finally finished, I ended up with a master's in political science. Yes, I'm weird. With in American government, and did a graduate certificate in ancient classical history.
Wow, that's a great accomplishment for quote unquote someone who has a disability, and that should
Thank you.
make sure that those that are making excuses would change that part of their behavior. And you had said something
Yeah,
earlier
I don't play that
that,
game. I don't use it as a crutch. I don't. Now, I'm very frank and aware of there are things I will never be able to do, and that's fine. I'll figure it
yeah,
out, but I don't. I don't make excuses. I generally don't procrastinate unless it comes to housework or editing. That's a different story. Ha ha ha. That's why I'm an editor. But just because it's my less favorite things to do, I'd rather create than edit, although it's very important. But no, I don't play the victim card. I do what I can. I'm aware of my parameters, but I'm also aware of equally what I've been able to accomplish despite and in spite of them and within them. So let's see what we can do.
Yeah, you had mentioned that your first marriage that you'd walked away from. How was that space with your marriage, and what did it do to you as an individual person within that marriage? What happened to you, the person, that caused you to make it?
Well, anyone who's been through divorce knows divorce is very heartbreaking and challenging, no matter what the circumstances or for what the reasons, because it's you thought something was going to be. You had had these
Yeah,
plans, you had had these dreams, and they get shattered, and you were a we, and then now you're a for whatever reason you have to become a an I again, and everything that's attached to that just went poof out the window. Whether it was for the best at the time, whether you realized that or not, or it was not what you wanted for whatever reason, it's still gone. Um,
yeah,
he had this is not about him necessarily or what that was, but it was part of my story. So he had some things from his childhood that he just couldn't for whatever reason, and I never solved it, and that's not my issue to solve anymore, that we couldn't get past, and it caused problems. And I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm willing to work with people if they're willing to work too, because it takes two, and make good choices to correct. I don't mind that you have baggage or that you have issues. We all got issues. We all got baggage. But like I said, it's what are
yeah,
you going to do with it? And he wasn't willing to, for whatever reason, wasn't willing or was not able to work through it and do what had to be done to make sure that we had what we needed. And so I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to walk away because this is no longer viable at this point, and I'm not going to keep doing this. As far as me personally, once again, because I was raised faith based, I was raised in we don't get divorced. Like there wasn't divorce in my family
yeah.
until my generation. Like my grandmother was married to her husband for 28 years until he passed away. I think it was 28 years. And she's been a widow my whole life because my mom's dad died 2 months before I was born. So I never met him,
Wow.
unfortunately. But she was married for 28 years. I think my dad's parents were married for like 30 something years. My own parents, excuse me, just had their 48th anniversary. And in 2 years, or a little less than 2 years now, they'll be married for half a century. And they've been together for over 50 years, including dating. We don't do divorce in our family, okay? It wasn't done. Now, they understood the situation, but I wasn't raised that way. So it was something that was foreign to me. And I'm not knocking it because obviously I'm divorced, so I can't, whatever. But I wasn't raised to ever believe that that would be a part of my life. I am a Christian. I was raised in Christian beliefs that you don't get divorced and you do what you have to save your marriage, and you just don't do it. It's not done. We don't believe in divorce. I still don't believe in divorce, actually. I didn't want to be divorced. It wasn't my
Yeah.
choice in the sense of I would have made it work, but I can't do it by myself. And so that was hard for me because I found myself in a place I never believed would be a part of my life, or that I thought should be a part of my own personal beliefs as a woman of faith.
Mhm.
And so that was challenging. I think it took me 6 months just finally to decide, once we separated, if I really wanted to get divorced or not, and was this really something I could do. And I know the world sees it differently than necessarily maybe from a place of faith. It was important to me that my divorce be in the correct context of biblical principle and what's considered a scriptural divorce, and it was. That mattered to me, and so I wasn't willing to just do it on a whim, per se. Not saying people
Yeah.
do that, but that's why it was such a hard decision for me, and I took such a long time to agonize over it. And so that's what it did to me. And then I had to figure out, once I knew that that was okay and that it was the right decision for me at the right time, I had to figure out, okay, what now? I'm 26. This is not what I thought would be of my life. I had thought of and planned and pictured something totally different. What do I want now? And then it took a minute. I took a step back. My parents at the time were like, "You need to go to grad school." I'm like, okay, yes, but I'm going to take a year for myself. I just had my
Mhm.
life devastated. I'm not and because school is, like I said, is very challenging for me, and I didn't think it would be wise to take on a challenge on top of a challenge. Sometimes
Yeah.
we don't have
Yeah.
a choice, but I had a choice in that case, and I didn't want to overload myself. And so I wanted a year to breathe and kind of reassess and refocus and figure out what I wanted. And so that's what I did. And in that year, I got back to me being me and finding what I wanted in life and designing that course and redefining it for myself and making that choice to say, okay, this sucks. I didn't want this, but I don't want to stay here either. So
Yeah.
there's the other choice, is to figure it out. And that's what I did. And then I started grad school, and then I met someone. And then we had 12 years together, including dating. And then he was the one that passed away, which was even harder than divorce, which I didn't think I'd be in a position to compare. I
Yeah.
can honestly say losing your spouse is a lot harder than divorce, believe it or not. And I'm not knocking how hard divorce is, because I've lived that too. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is way harder. But anyway, so that's what it was for me, to go through divorce at 26 and coming from the background that I came from.
So let me ask you a question. Here you are, a woman of faith, and going through divorce and pain and so forth. Know that you. What were some of those tools, along with your faith, did you use to help you those dark times, to begin to imagine your life as a single person and putting it back together?
I rely on my church. I relied on counseling. I'm a huge proponent of counseling. Huge, huge, huge. Love counseling. Um, I'll admit it. I'm not ashamed. Keeps me sane, right? I
Yeah.
rely on my friends a lot then and now. I there was a program out there. Some may have heard of it. It's called Divorce Care, and it was like a support group, in the sense that it was, or more like a group Bible study, where you go. It was 13 weeks, I believe. It's been a long time since I had to look at it, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, because they're also the same ones that do Grief Share, and it's kind of built on the same structure, where it's a 13-week program, and you meet
Mhm.
once a week, and you watch like a DVD or a session, and then you have a workbook, and then you discuss it. And so during that time period, I did do divorce care. I was in counseling. I had my friends. I did a lot of journaling, a prayer time, quiet time, things like that.
What did you learn? Because I know some of the beautiful things that take place within the counseling aspect, that they start digging things that you start recognizing about yourself. What were some of those things that you discovered about you that you may not have, that they were there, or you may have known, but you hadn't really focused on it? What were some of those things that you started to discover about you?
I think when certain issues happen in marriage of an intimate nature, without giving too much TY, what's the TMI is what I was looking
Mhm.
for. I think when women go through certain things, and I'm sure it's some version of the flip side for guys, but I'm not a guy, so I don't know how y'all would
Yeah.
relate to it or what it would do to y'all. I had to really look at myself and realize, that really isn't on you, and just because of what you went through has no true bearing on who you are as a woman and how you used to
Yeah.
see yourself as a woman. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I had to heal from that. If y'all are creative minds, like I'm sure y'all are, and intellectuals, y'all might kind of have some theories as to what I'm trying to reference without outright saying it. And that his issues really weren't mine, although it affected me, and that I wasn't
Mhm.
responsible for it. And I learned in my marriage that it takes two, and you can't drown trying to save someone else.
I
And
absolutely
so
agree. I
I
keep
had
telling
to,
people that one of the examples, Michaela, is plane. They always give you that
yep,
before you start flying.
yes,
They do the demonstration. If there's anything happen, the oxygen mask comes down. Make sure you put it on yourself first. And that part is a hard thing, especially those that are in like parenthood and having to put on the mask first before the kids is
yeah,
they're thinking, oh my God, how could I do that? But you ought to be doing that first to take care of you so that you can take care of the
mm-hmm,
kids. Because when you put on that mask, it's not finished because they're going to be shocked, they'll be all these things. And if you are a mess and
yep,
you're not able to get to, can really more damaging else. As you said, you have to learn how to take care of yourself. So as you're learning how to take care of yourself, things and you're excavating as your clinical partners working with you, and you were discovering all of these different, how did you end up leading towards writing a book? What was that first thought like as you're coming out of your journey and you're like, okay, let me write a book? How did that happen? And what
actually, writing was always a part of my life long before I was ever at a high school or in college or even thinking of marriage. I obviously what I write now is not what I would have written as a child, but
mm-hmm.
I said I was an odd duck. Remember that when I was talking about politics? I got the harebrained idea in my head when I was in second grade. So I was about 7 or 8 at the time, living in Texas. I must have gotten, I don't know, mad about something, or if I had to guess of the time period, because that would have been 86, 87, and you may be able to uh, confirm that my thinking is correct. I think there was a Supreme Court decision about that, a timing that supposedly burning the American flag is within the parameters of the First Amendment, right? And I was all upset.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I was just like, no, that is unacceptable. So I got the harebrained idea of I need to write an editorial and let the world know that this is unacceptable. I was 7 or 8. Okay, that's weird. What kid does that
Yeah.
at that age? But anyway, and it got published. And
Oh.
in my political series, I put it at the beginning of each political book to give a an ode or a nod to the beginning of my political interest, even in second grade. Go figure. But and then I wrote my first poem in fourth grade. So I've always had and felt drawn to the written word and the thoughts of writing. And but because I was in school, it took me a really long time to get there because, like I said, I don't really do anything else except when I'm in school. And then I started writing poetry in high school, and I had to chew on that book for about 10 years because I was in high school and then and did college. And college for me was really like 3 jobs. I didn't really do an outside job because I would go to class, come home, work with readers 20 to 30 hours a week, which is someone's usual part-time job in college. And then I would do my homework after they left. So it was really like 3
Wow.
jobs. So that's why I say I don't do anything else when I'm in school. So anything else that I care about, I don't get to. And then I did all the things like getting married to the person that I divorced and then dealing with divorce. So it took me about 10 years to put that book together. And I finally published it in 2011 while I was married again and had an 8-month-old. Like I said, I'd never do one thing. Oh, and then I decided to go to grad school and having an 8-month-old. That probably wasn't intelligent, but hey, I survived. And then I had another kid do grad school. But anyway, so I've always written, and a lot of what I write now when I was in grad school, because I didn't have time to write for me. Oh, I was writing all the time, but it was for the professors. It was academia. It was straight academic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was percolating and creating and brainstorming all these thoughts and ideas. And I thought, okay, I want to do these things, but I can't do it while I'm in grad school. So I just tucked them away. I stored them. And then when I got out of grad school in 2016, I said, I'm taking a month off. I don't want to see a book. I don't want to hear the word book. I want nothing. I need total decompression. Because like when I was in grad school, we were living in New Hampshire, 26 hours away from friends and family. My husband did military. He was in school. I was in school. We were a young married couple. Well, newlyweds. He was 41. He was 43 and I was 28. So not necessarily young, but young married and newly married. And then we had a daughter, and then I had a 3-year-old, and I did my thesis when my 4-month-old wasn't sleeping through the night, and my 3-year-old, I was like, I'm done. I'm like, I need a break. Talking about self-care, I did nothing for a month. And then I waited till my daughter started, I think she started first grade that year. Yeah, she did. And so then once she was in school, I decided, okay, I've had my month off. I took a little hiatus. I'm going to organize all these thoughts, all this creative energy and brainstorms that I couldn't get to for 5 years and put them together. And how I did grad school is I would do the work while the kids were napping or at night. And then on Saturdays, when my husband didn't have drill weekend, I would go to Panera's and do the stuff I couldn't get to during the week. So everyone knew me at Panera's for about 5 years. They knew my order and everything, and they knew my pencils and my markers and my highlighters and the books and the articles and the legal pads and all the things. So I traded grad school work during nap time and nighttime for writing time. And so I decided, once I had organized all those ideas, okay, where do I want to start? I thought, well, I'm a young mom and I don't really I had some girlfriends up north, but not like I do down south. Because before I moved up north, I'd been a Southern girl my whole life. I was born in Texas and lived there for almost 10 years. I guess I should keep talking. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening to you.
Okay.
I'm just
I didn't know what
listening to you.
happened. And then I lived in Louisiana for 19 and moved up north. So most of my friends were down south. And so I thought, well, I can write my thoughts. And there's half the population are women. And so half of us are going through this. So I'm not the only one. So let me write them down. So that's how I got my series, Take a Sip, Take a Breath, and Go. And then I thought, well, if I can do this on motherhood, I can do it on faith, I can do it on politics and whatever else topic I'm interested in. And so I created 5 different series, which is all the books that have come from. So all the books that I write now stem from all those brainstorms. I know this is a really long answer to your question, but it's the process, right? But I got in grad school while I was doing grad school work. So anyway, that's what I write on. I write on my motherhood. I write on my faith. I write on politics. I write on the series that I write to my kids, for my kids. It's not a children's book, but it's the things that I want them to know when they leave my home and they go on their own journey in life. And then I have the Now I See book that is about my own journey that we've been talking about today. So anyway, like I said, I never just do one thing.
That's a lot of stuff. And it's just powerful stuff. And it shows that, as you mentioned earlier on the onset of the conversation, about your determination and that never giving up.
Yes.
quality that was instilled in you from a young child by your parent, and the fact that you're accomplishing all of these things as you're moving through life, and walking and going through your grace, as you say earlier, and the outcome. So talk to me, how did you come up with that specific in your journey? How and where did it first manifest? Where you thought of it and then you began to put it. Do you remember how that
The,
came about?
the finding grace through grief thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always knew the 5 steps. Like I've always used them, right? Like I said, I learned how to use those at an early age, and then I had to kind of like muscle memory. I had to use them again when I got divorced, and then when I lost my husband.
Yeah.
But the actual verbiage of how I framed it, funny story. I also totally different topic, but because it's the background of how to the answer to your question, I sell Mary Kay. But so I was talking to my director, and we were having a conversation about where I was at in my business, and she's like, "Girl, you need to give yourself some grace." I'm like, yeah, I'm not very good at that. But in the last 4 or 5 years, because I'm a perfectionist, okay, y'all. And so I'm always really harder on myself than anyone else. And I'm an overachiever and, doing 5 million things at one time. I'm sure y'all figured that out by now. So you need to give yourself some grace. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really good at that. But like in the last 5 years or so, through grief, I've had to learn how to give myself grace. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Grace through grief. Okay, I got an idea. Like if people are with me, they can know when I get like these major brainstorms. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I used to be in drama in high school, okay, y'all, and I have to talk with my hands. So that's how it came. I was having a totally different conversation with a friend and someone I work with about nothing having to do with any of this. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I love inspiration and creativity, because it can literally come from anywhere and anything. And no matter what you're doing, you can get inspiration. I mean, I wasn't even talking about writing. I wasn't even talking about my journey. It was something totally different. And I get this massive brainstorm that came together to create this wonderful thing that we're talking about today.
Hmm.
My conversation that created that had nothing to do with that. And it just because of what we were talking about, I got this inspired idea. And I think that's what's so great when you do have creativity, energy, and juice and flow, and you're a creative person. You can get it from anywhere. That book I mentioned, no, I didn't mention that to you. I have another conversation today. I wrote a really short book, and I am not known for, I'm sure you can tell, I am not known for being short or concise. That is not my world. But I wrote a
Yeah.
100-page book, 120-page book, which is the shortest book I've ever written, by the way. And I told the world, like, don't get used to it because that will be the only one you get that is that short. But the point is, I was on the beach with my daughter in the Atlantic Ocean on a family vacation, playing in the waves, not even thinking about writing. And I get this, within 5 minutes, I got an outline. And that's when you know it's good. When it's just like this
Yeah.
download that dumps in your brain like that. You know you're on the right track when that happens. Because that does not always
Yeah.
happen. But within 5 minutes, I had a whole outline for a book. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, please let me get to the hotel in time for me to write it down because I don't have my phone in the Atlantic Ocean. I don't want to forget it. But so that's, it's just very creative and very interesting. And so that's how I've come up with a lot of my ideas. And I was having a conversation with a work person, a colleague, and a friend that helped me get through just the flow of energy of creating and discussing and minds and thoughts and intellectual thinking. It came up with the finding grace through grief, because I did find working progress
Yeah.
process of giving myself grace in my grief journey. So anyway,
Those that are
and there's
listening to our conversation, man, this is a really good conversation. And she is talking, Michaela is talking about all of the journeys and the different challenges that she had in her life. But the thread that she talks about is her faith. She talks about the tenacity, the not giving up, not allowing people's opinion about her to affect her and to prevent her from achieving what she wants to achieve. She talked about healing and when the dark times come. She talks about her grace. I love that and all that it encapsulates. Any of you that are listening to us, I want you to get in touch in her space. I'm going to provide these things for you. Get in her space. I want you to buy her books and pick up the 100-page one and buy a ton of those, because she said it'll never happen again. And so you're going to want to give those to give it out to your people as and tell them that this will never happen again. So that you guys can learn from her, so that you can gain wisdom and knowledge from her. I want you to talk to me about this, Michaela, about people coming to you now, and how do you impart that information about the insight that was downloaded into you, and how speaking to people concerning this grace, because I know it would bring some results. What were some of those results that you saw and witnessed concerning different people's lives once they implement your process?
Well, I think while, okay, we all talk about how not everything is going to help everyone, but what does happen is overcoming is overcoming is overcoming. Now, I may not have had someone else's struggles and they've not had mine, but the idea of what it takes to overcome is the same no matter what you're overcoming. Okay. We all have to have a foundation. We all have to make a choice. We all have to have a good mindset and self-care. That is not indicative of, well, one person might have this obstacle versus this obstacle. It's still the same idea if you want to overcome. So that's why I say it works for everyone, even though mine are different from someone else's. The idea of what I talk about is still workable for everybody. And I've had a lot of conversations and people tell me, well, this is great stuff. And I can see how this is useful. And I hope they implement it. You know, I'm mainly a writer and that's what I do. As you can tell, that's what I do. And I put my truth and my wisdom and things in my work, but it's through speaking that I bring people. Okay. So we talk about in our society about if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there, did it still make a sound? Well, I'm an author. I don't want to be an author in a forest. Okay. I want the word to get out. You know, it did happen, even though it may be happening in my house when I write it, but it does exist. I promise. So I want to get it out. And I think through speaking is another way of doing that to bring people and make them aware of it. And then they hear how you talk about it and it impacts their lives with your message and your story, because that's what I want to do. I want to help other people to be able to go from surviving to thriving, whatever they're trying to survive, you know, because like I said, it's not a question of when, if, it's a question of when. We're all going to go through something. It's probably going to be more than one. So you might as well figure it out if you want to not stay there. But, and then I'm hoping to create a coaching program as well that I'm working on that I think will really help for people who want to really kind of dive into the weaves of it so they can really apply and learn and implement what might work for them. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Awesome. And when you get that up, your coaching program, just let me know because I'll again upload it and make people aware of it. Especially we have them in different social media platforms, so we'll always keep the the audience abreast as to all the new things because people are giving birth to things all day long. So I love to keep it fresh and bring it in. Michaela, I want to
The
thank
other
you for
thing
coming
I'm
to Threads of
excited about,
Enlightenment.
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Yes, you're
tell me.
welcome. I would say the other thing that it's going to be a year-long process, but I'm really excited about what I'm doing with a group of people. It's a collective, and we're calling it the Echo Summit. And we're like-minded people that have our own messages, but are centered around the same thoughts that we're working on. And I'm looking forward and really excited about where that'll go. So anyway.
Excellent. We will, again, just keep me abreast and we'll make sure everyone knows. And I just want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and sharing with us your wisdom, your tenacity, your grace, all the things that you learned so that you and I and the listeners can become better human spirits. I just want to thank you so much, Michaela, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity and allowing me to contribute to the dialogue and the flow of thought and hopefully pouring into your audience and giving them something that they can take with them.
Excellent. Thank you so much.